So our economy panel is about to begin. Peggy, Benua. David Vogel, Jamie Martin, Dr. Nancy Scanlon, and Rick Hawkins will be joining us to talk about climate change, economy, and our tourism industry. Please welcome them. Thank you.
David, you sit there.
We'll get ourselves organized.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Peggy Benua. I'm the general manager at Dream South Beach Hotel, and I'm also an alum of the Chaplain School of Hospitality Management at Florida International University. So I'm delighted to be back today, and I'll be moderating the panel. First, we have David Vogel, who's the CEO of Voloridge Investment Management and the founder of the VoLo Foundation. He's going to talk to us before we start. He has a short presentation for us. Dr. Nancy Scanlon, who is the professor here at the Chaplain School at FIU, and she's also the chair of the Greater Miami Beaches Hotel Association Sustainable Hospitality Panel, which I also serve on that panel as well. Jamie Martin is Executive Director in Morgan Stanley's Global Sustainable Finance. Hawkins, who is the Breakers Director of Materials Management, and also he is the Director of the Green Team at the Breakers Palm Beach. They have a very impressive program going on there. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to David for his presentation.
First of all, I'd like to thank Cleo for having me. It's been a wonderful conference so far. In fact, a little too good, because a lot of what I was going to say was said better by some previous speakers. So I had to forgive me that I had to rewrite my talk in the last few hours. But just to clarify something, I am not a climate scientist. I am a data scientist, and I'm a person who spent a lot of time analyzing climate science from a data perspective, and it's a little different way of showing the data and the connection between carbon dioxide and warming of the atmosphere. So, as a data scientist, I have to naturally be a skeptic of any science, and climate science was one of them not too many years ago. And so I had to either prove to myself it was real or not real by looking at my own data. And fortunately, I was terrified I was going to have to go back and get a degree in physics to understand climate science until I realized it was just a matter of some basic arithmetic. This whole debate about whether carbon dioxide increasing is some natural trend or man-made. It was simply a matter of downloading basic consumption numbers published by the energy industry, some basically completely undisputed numbers, multiplying it out for a molecular count and lining that up to the graph of increasing carbon dioxide. And you can basically account for every single molecule of increased carbon dioxide from the energy industry. And again, I want people, someone mentioned here the goal of this conference is for everybody in here is a believer in climate change, but want to be able to empower you with some information to when skeptics ask, how do you know? It's actually fairly simple proof. I think the other thing that's real important is coming up with some kind of price per carbon. I think there's been a lot of talk about the damages on health and rising sea level. The one area that hasn't been touched too much is hurricane strength. I've done a lot of analysis myself. Actually, downloaded buoy data myself for that upper left graph to compare frequency of hurricane on the y-axis versus temperature of the water. And basically, it was pretty evident from the data that hurricanes don't happen when the water is under 80 degrees, and hurricane season, that half of the year when we have hurricanes, is when the water temperature fluctuates. Typically in the past between 80 and 84 degrees, and you can actually see not only how the temperature affects hurricane frequency, but pretty much when the water is 81, 82 degrees, you only see category 1s and 2, category 1 and 2 hurricanes. And when the temperature is 84, 85, you have more often you have category 4 and 5s. In fact, those are predominant. And in that big hurricane season in 2017, the water temperatures are up to 86 degrees. So I think I want to paint a picture of how much 1 degree actually means. That lower right graph is real important because it shows who's paying for all those damages. And it's gone from the good old 80s and 90s when most damages were covered by insurance companies. Well, and then the blue on the bottom shows the amount being covered by FEMA, for the federal government stepping in. And more we're having people pick up the tab themselves, and that's certainly not good. But you can see the insurance companies, they're getting smarter. They know not to cover hurricanes and those damages, while those in the White House think that windmills cause cancer. And I'll correct that. Windmills do not cause cancer. I can't remember who said that, but might have rhymed with the word jump. But I thought since a lot of the climate talk was taken care of by real climate scientists, I thought since being an investment manager, I'd throw an investment opportunity at everyone. I'm going to describe it, and then we'll get a show of hands of how many people want to take this opportunity. So for every $6 you give me, I'll return $4.50 over a number of years. And I know it sounds kind of small, but I'm going to allow you to scale that to any amount you want. So if you give me invest in $6,000, I'm going to give you $4,500 back over a number of years. And if you're wealthy enough, if you give me $6 million, I'm going to return this investment will return $4.5 million over the next several years. And that's if everything goes well and some of the capital doesn't get damaged. So I'm personally building a solar farm on some land in North Carolina, and most of it's to offset our carbon footprint, but it's also to really understand the economic problem that's going on here that I think is very correctable. And the problem is, it cost me about 6 cents a kilowatt hour to build the farm, and the payout from the utility company is $4.50. Sorry. Before I found that out, I was thinking, okay, well, if I get 6 cents back, I'll break even on this investment. I'm still doing some good. If I get 8 or 9 cents per kilowatt hour, that's great. I'm actually making a pretty good return. Like everybody would be doing it. And so the issue is, and I've talked a lot with several people in the utility company, and they can get energy for 4.5 cents a kilowatt hour from natural gas. And so we were presented with all these damages being done by carbon, and up here I prepared just the price per ton of carbon from just hurricanes, and that's just for the U.S. and that's $15 a ton. If you were to actually add up all the carbon damages, it's probably somewhere like $200 a ton, which is something like 10 cents a kilowatt hour. And if you look at that increase in the blue below, as taxpayers, we're paying that. So if you actually add 10 cents a kilowatt hour to the natural gas, you're actually paying 14.5 cents as a society to it's actually way more expensive than the solar. And so that's why from a policy standpoint, we want people to understand that if we can push the, if we can incorporate the true price of carbon, the economy would actually move itself. And so I thought it was real important, especially for our youngest people here, that this problem of people just producing carbon is very solvable. It's really just it's an economic issue, and if the economics is fixed, then we don't need a lot of subsidies and regulation, and that just you incorporate the true price of carbon, that can really fix things. And so I prepared some information about effect on tourism, that kind of thing, but most of that's been said, so I'll probably either pass on to the next speaker or take questions.
Thank you.
Thanks, David. So I do have some questions for you, and you had mentioned that you were a skeptic of climate change, and you gave us some data to look at, but what really stood out for you that convinced you that climate change was real?
I'd say it was really a lot of the stuff that I showed in the graph, those are part of it. There were some slides, some additional information I have where I analyzed ice core data, which stores the 1 million year history, or 800,000 year history of carbon dioxide versus temperature of the Earth. And so basically through the last 800,000 years, every time the carbon dioxide's gone up, the temperature's gone up. Every time carbon dioxide's gone down, temperature's gone down. And it came out to a 91% correlation, which in data science is huge. It's almost a perfect correlation. So there was really no doubt in my mind that this was made up and carbon dioxide caused warming. And of course the man-made stuff was the previous slide. It was just, you just add up just the weight of the 35 billion barrels of oil being consumed each year. And you know a barrel of oil weighs 275 pounds. About the chemical content is 85% carbon. You just add it up and it adds up exactly to the amount of carbon dioxide increasing in the atmosphere.
Very interesting. Now, tell us a little bit about the VoLo Foundation and some of the projects that have had the most significant impact on reducing carbon emissions.
I'd say the project we're probably most proud of, we did a project through WWF. We had seen their success in the past with the Amazon Fund to preserve and protect the Amazon rainforest in Brazil, and saw how it was initiated. We decided to go through the same organization that had been successful before, and we put in the first relatively small grant just to kickstart it, and it's gained a lot of traction. It's got tens of millions of dollars now behind it from many sources, and now protecting, I believe, 49 million acres in.
Are they you're buying up?
It's not buying it up; it's protecting.
Protecting.
Yeah. So buying up land in a lot of these countries do not at all assure protection. Our focus of the foundation this year, though, is raising awareness. We believe we can't move the needle enough through projects that directly preserve carbon. We need to make Floridians aware. I think Florida is an incredibly influential state politically, and Floridians need to be so aware that that climate change is affecting us more than the rest of the country. That our goal is for no politician in the next election to be able to run, I mean, either side of the aisle, to be able to stand a chance without addressing this issue and having solutions.
For sure. As a resident, yes. So let's talk about how climate change has impacted our economy on a global, national, and even local scale. David, if you could just kind of give us an overview.
Well, I guess we've had a lot of talk on that. So the hurricanes is the part that I know the most. I think we've seen some great speakers on sea level rise. I know Miami's already put over $200 million into adaptation on that, and another $300 million committed. I don't have the numbers on other cities, but I know it's in the hundreds of millions. Hurricane damage is huge. You never know when it's going to hit. About the numbers I gave, I guess the 15 trillion that I estimate over 50 years, historically about a quarter of all those damages are Florida. So that's tremendous. We were fortunate to get federal aid in the amount of, I believe, around $50 billion for Hurricane Matthew. Had that not come in, that would have been 55% of the entire state budget. And at some point, we've got to realize that the government's not, I mean, if FEMA is going to go bankrupt, there's not going to be money there. So Florida is going to be hit with a bill, whether it's through initiating a tax or just the victims of the storm being not being able to cover that. So it's a tremendous effect to our economy.
What do you think is the most efficient policy solution to reduce greenhouse gases at the federal level right now?
So price on carbon tax is one thing that's been thrown out there. A more right-wing carbon dividend would accomplish the same task. So I'm pretty impartial to what policy it is, as long as the price of carbon is in there. And I think once we establish that will move the whole economy in the right direction.
Seems like we're moving in that direction.
I hope so.
Okay, now I'd like to ask Nancy some questions more related to tourism, because that is our local economic driver. Nancy, can you give us an example of estimated tourism impact costs of Hurricane Irma, and how did you determine that?
Well, first of all, tourism does take a hit with climate events. And if the source of a lot of my information comes from the Greater Miami and the Beaches Visitor Industry Overview, which is actually online. So the numbers that I'm using today and the graphs and the comparatives, all you have to do is go onto the association's website and then look for research. It's sort of hidden away in there, but all of it's there, and it's very comprehensive. And the 2018 numbers will be out on the 1st of May. But they wouldn't let me have them, so I'm working on 2017. But that's a good one. But okay, so that's my basis of information, because it's a hard industry to put your hands on all the way around. There's so many moving pieces. Approximately 90% of arrivals to Miami come in by air. Greater Miami Airport is the 3rd largest international airport in the United States. And so we're going to use the number of arrivals charted by date by that group. And these arrival numbers are then correlated to the published span of impact days for Hurricane Irma. Now, hurricane is actually kind of easy to measure in the fact that it's coming, it's here, it's gone. You have to clean up, and you're ready to go back to business. All right. Other things are not quite so easy to determine start and finish, but the average expenditure per person per visit is estimated at $1,637. So, for Hurricane Irma, that value is calculated as the decrease in the combined U.S. and international arrivals, as a decrease of 334,544 visitors, for an estimated loss value of $547,648,509. This is a conservative estimate, okay? And that's to tourism, Okay, so.
Yes, and as a hotel GM, I can validate what Nancy said. When a hurricane happens, everything stops. Occupancy drops, work stops, contractors, it's just, it's like the end of the world for a few weeks, or Rick can talk about that too. While we hear the overall impact of hurricanes such as Irma and other climate-induced events, how do we identify and then estimate the impact values specifically to the tourism industry?
Well, and I think I kind of answered part of this question when I referred to this. The other is the Greater Miami and the Beaches Hotel Association. We represent the largest number of operating hotels in Greater Miami. And through that, we can gather a tremendous amount of information based on the number of hotels, the number of rooms, occupancy levels, average rates, how those rates rise and fall, based on, for instance, if you know a hurricane like Irma is coming in, all of a sudden our arrivals start slowing down, things start canceling. And then as we start ramping up again, all right, we have to, sometimes our rates have to drop in order to accommodate the loss of business, but then the rates start ramping back up again as we get back to business as normal. It's a hard business to put your hands on. Would you agree, Peggy?
Yes, definitely. So let's shift gears. Let's talk about the impact of Zika on Miami tourism, because that had a long range impact, and maybe you can elaborate on that.
Zika, all right, there are a number of impact factors for Greater Miami tourism arrivals from Zika virus. And these included canceled conventions, meetings, social events, weddings. These were either canceled or located somewhere else, right? Depending. Groups with women of childbearing age and men, okay, and you're not out of the woods on this, guys, okay? Zika can do a tap dance on you, and it hangs around you a lot longer than it does women passing out of your system. So, you're looking surprised. However, okay, so let me go back to this. Sorry, I lost myself in my notes, all right? So companies rescheduled, moved meetings, conferences, and so forth, and many other social events. Now, estimating direct tourism impact would require tourism-related businesses to report to us, such as Peggy's hotel, how many meetings canceled, how many, as you said, bachelor and bachelorette parties canceled, how many events canceled, so we could start to take an impact value on that. So we're going back again, all right, and we're going back again to estimate, and the estimated time frame between July 2016 and November 2016. So if we look at those arrivals again as a common metric to measure, the estimated decrease in arrivals from the same calendar year time period in 2015 is 215,870 for a total estimated value of $353,379,190. Okay. So the numbers start to add up. And I'm sure that actually doesn't capture the absolute value of Zika.
Yes, and I would add that booking pace, which is future sales, also declined based on companies didn't want to bring meetings here because of the liability, the risk of bringing meetings to Miami Beach and one of their attendees contracting Zika during that time period.
So if we take Irma and we take Zika, their combined value to tourism is $901,170,825. And if we throw in a little bit of red algae bloom, it comes.
I operate a hotel in Miami Beach, and Nancy is very familiar with Miami Beach and what they're doing, but they've made a considerable investment in pumping stations, raising roads, Is this effective, or do you think it's too short term to make a difference?
Well, I think, first of all, the most important thing to look at is the fact that the overall economic impact of visitor spending to Greater Miami in 2017 was $25.97 billion. Of that number, approximately $14 billion is spent by overnight visitors in Miami Beach. 58.5% of all arrivals that stay in hotels stay in Miami Beach. So, Miami Beach is, depending upon which Wikipedia website you check, between 7 square miles and 15 square miles in area and has a resident population of 92,000 people. Okay? Now, what's really safest at the moment are the beachfront properties because they sit on top of the highest point of the coral ridge that runs down the coastline. What's really at risk is anything that's on the bay because this is all filled land from mangroves that were pulled up. Okay, so I guess if I was to say the original estimated cost for the pumping stations to keep water out of the streets and away from visitor feet so that we could maintain the Miami Beach visitor experience for as long as possible. It's not a question of what will happen. That's a given. What's a question is how do we keep it at bay? So at that point it was 600 million, and I'm sure it increased from there. So if you tell me that if I spend, 600 million, and then every year I'm going to get a return of 14 billion, I think I would say that it's that and raising the roads, okay, so we can keep the cars elevated. I would say that's a very well done enterprise.
And I know that they did go to the Netherlands, the city of Miami Beach, to see what they're doing over there. So, okay, so switching gears from tourism, Jamie, I'd like to ask you about sustainable investing. What is sustainable investing, and how is the demand for environmentally friendly investment grown? What trends are we seeing, and how has Morgan Stanley responded to that need?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks everyone and to the Clio Institute for having me here today. So I work in a group that some folks are surprised that Morgan Stanley has. It's called the Global Sustainable Finance Group. And essentially, Morgan Stanley believes that if the sustainability challenges, such as climate change, are truly going to be addressed, the capital markets play a key role in mobilizing capital towards the solutions that need to make that happen. And so we can talk about government, we can talk about policy, we can talk about philanthropy, but for the solutions to truly reach the scale that they need to hit, we need to include the investment community as well. And historically, the investment community has done quite well at creating shareholder value for many people. It has not done as good a job as in appropriately pricing in the externalities that David was talking about, and it has not been a good job of being transparent about how money is mobilized, frankly, around the globe at this stage. And so Morgan Stanley, my group kind of sits at the firm level, and not to oversimplify, but Morgan Stanley is in the business of giving advice and in the business of being a matchmaker in the capital market. So matching investors or large asset owners, investment managers with investment ideas to execute through us. Within our investment banking business, we provide advice to companies that want to grow by issuing equity or borrowing money through the credit markets. Within asset management, we create investment vehicles for investors of all different sizes to allocate to lots of different asset classes and geographies. And then we also have the largest wealth management business. We have nearly 16,000 financial advisors, mostly here in the U.S. They're all serving individuals and families and smaller institutions and helping them grow their wealth to reach their goals. And our ultimate goal is that for any potential touch point with Morgan Stanley, that we have a view on how how our clients can take action around sustainable investing. And just quickly, just to kind of level set on sustainable investing, there's lots of terms, acronyms around this: ESG, SRI, green, impact investing. We use sustainable investing as kind of the umbrella term, and then we think about kind of 4 different buckets within that. So on our wealth management business, we have what we call our investing with impact platform. So any client can choose investment strategies that are available on our investing with impact platform, and we categorize the products on there into 4 areas. The first is what we call restriction screening. So this is kind of what's been called socially responsible investing. It's been around basically since Vietnam. A lot of the religious organizations have really been trailblazers here, and socially responsible investing is basically restriction screen, so taking out certain sectors, certain companies, certain exposures, geographies that you might find objectionable from your values perspective. And a lot of the knock on sustainable investing is that you're going to underperform the market if you're integrating your values with your investment decisions. And really, we found that's just simply not true. It is true that if you are taking out certain sectors out of your portfolio and that sector outperforms its peer sectors, you're going to miss out on that performance. So you have to be careful about how you're adjusting portfolios. You want to really minimize what's called tracking error when you're trying to take that approach. And we've really seen an evolution from this kind of socially responsible investing version 1.0 into the next bucket, which we call ESG, or environmental social governance integration, ESG integration. And that's about trying to use non-financial information, so environmental, things like carbon footprint, social, things like what's the gender diversity on the board and the senior leadership positions of a company, as well as governance information. So using non-financial information to get a better picture of how a company operates, not just relying on what a company reports to Wall Street every 13 weeks, but really understanding how it interacts with its consumers, with its employees, with its customers, with its suppliers, and how it's trying to kind of evolve from a very shareholder-centric model to a stakeholder-centric model. And the data around this has improved dramatically, I'd say, in the last 3 or 5 years. And so investors of all different sizes are getting a lot smarter about how to do this ESG integration. So we've seen a real migration from assets, again, kind of in the restriction screen bucket, to ESG integration. We also have what we call thematic exposure, so that's where we have specific strategies focused on climate adaptation and mitigation, as well as gender diversity, community-based investing, microfinance. And then finally, what we call impact investing. We think about impact investing mostly in the private market, so investing in a private equity or a venture capital strategy that is intentionally, the company is intentionally using its business model to address social or environmental challenges. And so we find by just giving folks kind of that lay of the land, oftentimes, they might start and say, I'm super passionate about delivering, solar energy lanterns to sub-Saharan Africa, and helping, really drive that impact in my portfolio. And we have to walk them back a little bit and say, that's great. We really, we like the idea, but actually, trying to find a publicly traded company that does that can be a challenge. And so, again, trying to educate our clients on the full spectrum of approaches that they can take is helpful. So, again, I think, this has been something that has evolved significantly. There's also, there's no perfect company. Companies, I think, are being asked to do a lot more in this day and age and really step up and kind of fill a leadership void, and they're taking much more stronger stances on social and environmental issues. That being said, there's also this idea of greenwashing, where it turns into a marketing exercise rather than really intentionally trying to marry the business the sustainability strategy in a way that creates value for the business. So right now, according to the latest statistics, $12 trillion in the United States have some sort of social responsible impact investing mandate attached to them. That's grown 133% in the last 6 years. And I think, so that's 12 trillion here in the US. Globally, it's about 21 trillion. But in aggregate, the US capital markets, you can count it lots of different ways, but it's about, $40–50 trillion. So 1 out of every 4 roughly dollars, again, has some kind of sustainable investing motivation around it. And I think, again, it's about trying to give investors of all different sizes access to information to take action. And we hope at Morgan Stanley we can play a role in that.
What do you think is the percentage of investors at Morgan Stanley who are actively investing in these types of?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I'd say we've done some survey work around this, right? So we have something we call our Morgan Stanley Institute for Sustainable Investing. All of this information is publicly available. If you just Google Morgan Stanley and Sustainable Investing, it'll pop up. And we go out and we survey our 3 key client constituencies. So we survey big asset owners, sovereign wealth funds, insurance companies, pension funds, family offices, and we found that 84% of them are either currently integrating ESG or thinking about it. And of that 84%, 60% have started doing it in the last 4 years.
Wow.
We also go out and we survey asset managers. We did a survey in conjunction with Bloomberg. There's a few copies of this report in the room. And asset managers are staffing up around sustainable investing strategies. They've woken up to the fact that if they can do this right, they can justify their fees. They can help attract new capital in an asset management environment that has suffered from kind of fee compression as well. And so there are 89% said that they're going to be dedicating specific resources to sustainable investing. And then finally, I think most importantly for your question, we survey individual investors. And of the individual, we interviewed 1,200 individual investors of all different demographics and wealth sizes. 75% say that they are interested in sustainable investing. That's up from 71% 2 years ago. But that number jumps to 76% of women versus 68% of men, and 86% of millennials compared to kind of the general population are interested in sustainable investing. So again, the millennials might not have the wealth now, but they're paying attention to where their food's coming from. They're paying attention to where how efficient their cars are, how efficient their homes are, and we're seeing that behavior trickle over to their investor behavior, which can be a real macro driver behind all this going forward.
Can you give us some examples of sustainable investments that individual investors can?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of this, again, Morgan Stanley, we're doing lots of work around this, but Morgan Stanley does lots of different things. We're, again, not a perfect company by any stretch of the imagination either. I think we're, again, trying to think about different ways that for every potential touch point that an individual investor has with Morgan Stanley, that we have a sustainable investing option. So we have low minimum portfolios available for $5,000, where we have broad-based sustainability, climate-specific strategies, as well as gender diversity. The climate strategies, just to kind of bring it to life, are, I think, a mix of strategies where you'll take kind of an index approach, so you get broad exposure to the market, but you can tilt the index towards companies with a lower carbon footprint. You can also do things like take out what's called the Carbon Underground 200, or the top 200 emitting companies that emit the most carbon around the world. And if you do that in a broad-based diversified index, you're not going to get a whole lot of tracking error. The other strategies that we have are very much about shareholder engagement. So they'll actually own very small pieces of a company like ExxonMobil, and they will vote the proxy to encourage Exxon to improve their sustainability disclosure, improve their sustainability practices, and that can be a very powerful tool. You're starting to see some coalitions built around that. There's one called the Climate Action 100. It's got CalPERS, CalSTRS, New York Common, a couple of the big European pension funds have been very progressive on this, where they're saying, look, we're universal asset owners. We have to own the market to be a pension fund with billions and billions of dollars under management. And we're going to use our voting power collectively to really push companies to take these sustainability and climate challenges recently. And they've started to do some very targeted engagements, and I'm starting to see some success for that. So that kind of power dynamic, I mean, the companies have to legally respond to that if they get enough shareholder votes.
Now, Peggy is so organized that I have the questions here, and I know exactly what she wants to ask. So we were just wrapping up with Jamie Martin, who was shedding light on the fact that Morgan Stanley is trying to do some very big things and helping people who have a lot of money and a conscience find the way to sort of infiltrate and bite off more than they can chew so they too can choke on greatness. Thank you, Jamie. All right. So with that, I'd like to ask Rick Hawkins. Now, Rick comes from the Breakers, and I don't know if you've ever been to the Breakers, but you should go to the Breakers. He's Director of Materials Management and co-founder of Localecopia. how do you say it?
Ecopia, you're close.
Localecopia, and director of the Green Team at the Breakers Palm Beach. So, why was it important to the Breakers senior leadership of the resort to be green and incorporate sustainable and resilience measures?
Well, we have 140 acres on a barrier island with a half mile of beach. Can you hear that?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. So we're in a very sensitive area. So obviously, just where we're located at is a pretty serious issue. But why do we care about this stuff? We look at sustainability as our core value. And it's not just environmental sustainability. Sustainability really starts with our workforce. Our number one goal is the sustainability of the people that work for us. We take that seriously. The result of that, by the way, is tenure. In March, I celebrated my 45th anniversary with this company. And we see incredible tenure through our executive team, through the people who work in food service, even in the laundry. We create a workplace that is good for people, a good work-life balance. We want a sustainable life, work life, and home life for our team members. So we take that seriously. We do a lot of things, and we walk the walk. But you asked the question, how many people here have been to the Breakers? Can I see a show of hands? Wow, that is incredible. Some things you don't know about us. I put some stats down. We are the oldest continual operating business in the state of Florida. Who knew that? Who knew that? One of only 1,100 family-owned businesses over 100 years old. Our company was founded in 1896. One of only 4% of family businesses have made it to the fourth generation. Still the same family own us. And we employ 2,300 employees. We have a local economic impact of $850 million. So we're a big deal. Now, we're just a hotel, but people look at us. People that come there to spend their money, and we appreciate that, don't come to us because we're a green company. Incidentally, we don't have a green team anymore.
You don't?
No, we are now the environmental impact team because we think that has more meaning, you know.
Whatever you want to call it.
We're going to call it that. But that is, sustainability is our priority. I'm going to tell you a little story, you know, because we're able to influence the people that work there. We're able to influence the local community, businesses like us, but we can have an impact on other things too, and anybody can. And I'll tell you a story. One of the owners, the current board of directors, and a mentor of mine, he traveled to South America with his wife and went to a tropical rainforest. And they did a big tour down there, an environmental tour, and they spent a lot of time looking at coffee production down there. And coffee production, really, they clear-cut forests, decimate things, they wreck the waterways. The people working in these plantations got paid virtually nothing, no education, no health benefits. But there was an organization that was starting down there called the Rainforest Alliance. Now, I'd never heard about this. This is a long time ago. So he came back to the hotel. You know, they don't live there, but they come there for the meetings and said, Rick, do we sell Rainforest Alliance coffee? And I said, I don't know what that is. So I studied it. Now, we were working with a company called Royal Cup Coffee, you know, a big national coffee maker, and they did some really good blends for us, really good product. And I called them, and I said, do you guys sell Rainforest Alliance coffee? And they said, we never heard of it. So Garrett, the board member, and I traveled up there for a few days, did the full-blown tour. We did cupping with the company and talked about this stuff and asked them to explore Rainforest Alliance coffee, and they did. They came back a couple weeks later and said, we can do this. We can make that for you. And I said, well, what's it going to cost? Because, you know, there's a cost to coffee. So we're paying this much. It'll cost you this much to get it Rainforest Alliance certified. It's about this much more. It wasn't huge. So I approached my management and said, listen, you know, we can do something really cool here and advocate for this coffee. And the annual impact is going to be this many dollars. It's not a big deal. Plus, we charge a lot of money for our coffee. So they said yes. And we became the first company in the world to serve Rainforest, the first hotel in the world to serve Rainforest Alliance coffee. I'm really proud of that. But think about that. One little hotel was able to do that. Now, Royal Cup sells millions of pounds of this stuff, but we're the first hotel to kick it up. We introduced into this thing, And it just shows that a company, large and small, can make a difference. Just like what you were saying, what the ability you can do that. So we look at the future. We're looking at the next generations. We know how the future lies with the environment and really trying to make the steps to do that. Cleo was good enough to pay us a visit. Natalia came up and actually did a presentation to our environmental impact team. And it was life-changing for all of us. It was. As a matter of fact, one of our employees went to Cleo and got certified as a speaker. We took that training and we did a presentation that geared it towards our hotel, threw some Palm Beach things in there as well, and presented it to our executive team, a special 2-hour meeting with our top executives. And again, it was so impactful. Now, I started off that meeting, I simply asked, you all have big jobs. Think about all the things you do. I mean, this is an amazing business. You all do so much. You have so much responsibility. You're in the community. You do all these things. When you woke up this morning, was the environmental issues, climate change, sea level rise, on your top 20? And it's not. Nobody thinks about that stuff when you get up. But I'll tell you what, at the end of our presentation, I asked the same question, and I got a different answer. So it really does make a difference. Our leaders lead, and we walk the walk.
2 questions. You know you're not going to get a chance to ask questions because we're out of time and we got another panel. But I have 2 questions for him. 1, are you hiring?
I have to see your resume.
We can get you that very quickly. And secondly, is there a possibility that you will create a blueprint for other hotels and industries to sort of take some of your incredible walk the talk examples so that they too can learn what to do, not just with materials and use, but educating the main players in your company?
We could, and
we would disseminate it for you. Cleo would disseminate it for you.
Yes, you would. The answer is that would be a wonderful opportunity. Now, we invest in the future. We take that seriously. We invest, way down the road. A lot of hotels can't do that. A lot of management-owned companies really don't care about 5, 10, 20 years. They care about buying it, throwing a few dollars in and selling it for a profit. But yes, I've got a whole laundry list of things that make so much sense. Everybody wants to make a profit. We've done so many things that increase our profitability, that drop our cost of sales, our operating costs, energy savings, waste management, all of that, water savings. An example, we talked about water intrusion. We've got a well that we built on the hotel property. It's 1,100 feet down into a saltwater aquifer. We built an RO plant, and that thing produces up to, 400,000 gallons of water a day. That used to be potable water going into our irrigation. Now it's all that. So that's an investment. We got our money back in 5 years. Water's expensive.
Are you hearing that? They invested in an RO system, reverse osmosis, and you made that money back and then some.
Yeah. Things like window film. We reach out to companies. Thank you. We reach out to companies for opportunities. 3M on there. We tested this window film in 2 identical guest rooms. We turned the AC off, identical rooms facing the same direction, and tested the temperature drop between no film and this clear transparent film. 14 to 19 degrees temperature drop.
No.
Now, every one of our windows has got this film on it. Think about the energy savings, the lack of wear and tear on the air handlers, all the things, the carpet fading, all that is gone now, and it wasn't that expensive. We probably got that money back in 3 or 4 years. But think about the impact. You just have to go and look at this stuff and you have to invest in that. So, yeah, and of course, we got rid of plastic straws. But who hasn't yet,
Well, bless you. I really think that all of you deserve accolades for walking the talk. If I had a lot of money, I would be speaking to you, Jamie. And really, if I had a ton of money, I would be doing what you're doing, David, and I'd form my own little VoLo or Lewis Foundation, and maybe we could partner together. But these three people who remain here and the two that left us prematurely really have given us a lot of food for thought. That doing the right thing, just for the sake of doing the right thing, sometimes is enough, but economically it also makes sense. So thank you, thank you, thank you.